Hello, 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 folks. Welcome back to Holding Space. Melinda Zappone, if you're here on Substack. And welcome back to Enya. Everyone needs you always. If you're here on Spotify or YouTube, we're just going to get right into it because I feel the community around me and no need to explain what we're doing here. So let's just talk today about something I'm calling Save Us, the silent statement in so many relationships, how unspoken fear and gut memory shapes our relationships, and how the toolbox approach and the phases of healing help us hear and sense what's really being asked. As we're starting here today, I'm going to make some announcements before we get to our content. There are exciting things happening on the Enter the Phases of Healing site for anyone looking to immerse more. As promised, we are building a higher education on healing location, a You Are Not Broken university that started with the book and is now the location for courses and access to information on what a 3-day therapy intensive can do for you. Please look here for the Toolbox Approach modules and bookmark the site for this and therapy intensives as well as other goodies. So I'm going to start, talking about unspoken partnerships. When we are in relationships, they are all unspoken partnerships. This is true across romance, marriage, friendship, family, work, and even the communities and systems we rely on, whether or not they sit inside our intimate circle. You might be thinking, no, I'm pretty self-sufficient, or only my spouse is my partner, or my kids definitely do not feel like partners. And from a cognitive left brain definition of partnership, that makes sense. But that isn't the level I'm speaking to here. What I'm describing and what Holding Space subscription, backed by the Toolbox approach and the phases of healing, speaks to is a healing bottom-up understanding of partnership. From this perspective, partnership isn't about roles, responsibility, or equality of labor. It's about how our nervous systems are constantly in relationship with one another. Everything that happens to us in relationship first happens at the nervous system level, and this is the level where we often lack language and intelligence. Relationships become mirrors for what we haven't yet developed awareness around internally. They show us where safety, threat, longing, repair, or disconnection is happening beneath conscious thought. But mirrors alone aren't enough. We need tools to work with what we see. A bottom-up approach to relational partnership becomes a tool in itself. It invites a shift in mindset. Every relationship is offering information. Every connection is holding up a mirror. This can feel daunting at first, but it's not meant to be public or burdensome. This is a private framework for your own growth. Only the people you choose to share it with ever need to know you're using it. Silent agreements. Who is supposed to save this? Well, when we remain in early stress responses long enough, those responses stop being momentary reactions and begin to wire themselves into patterns. Over time, they form the pathways our brains default to, not because anything has gone wrong, but because survival responses are incredibly effective teachers. These pathways are neither good nor bad. The problem arises when they are shaped by stress alone and never interrupted by experiences that reorient us towards safety, connection, and regulation, both within ourselves and with others. Without that reorientation, we can live for years, even decades, navigating life from a survival map without realizing it. When this happens, our thoughts also begin to reflect survival logic. Much of the mental dialogue we experience in relationships is drawn from very old data formed long before we had awareness, choice, or adult flexibility. We often assume our thoughts are truth, when in reality they are patterned responses linked to states of threat and protection. Part of healing involves learning that the mind and the brain are not the same thing. The brain holds the pathways built through experience. The mind interprets those pathways as meaning. When we repattern the brain without surgery, simply through experience, awareness, and new relational input, the mind can gradually loosen its grip on survival-based interpretations. In that loosening, a restored narrative becomes possible. That in relationships, we are separate people, yet we rely on one another to know ourselves more fully. We become sensory mirrors for each other, reflecting emotional material we cannot access alone. This is not pathology. It is how humans develop and heal. But mirrors only help if we know how to use them. From a bottom-up perspective, partnership isn't primarily cognitive, it's sensory. Beyond the five senses we consciously name, sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, the body is constantly perceiving safety, danger, closeness, distance, resonance, and threat. Muscles hold memory, nerves track patterns, cells remember what the mind never recorded. Long before we form a thought, the body has already registered what the space feels like. Yet in relationships, we often almost exclusively focus exclusively on what the mind is saying, our interpretations, assumptions, and conclusions. This is one reason relationships feel so confusing and exhausting. The mind is trying to resolve or solve something that originated far below it. Healing introduces a different tool, insight. This isn't reflection in the usual sense, it's inward seeing. Instead of interpreting the partnership from the top down, we roll the internal footage backward. We ask, where did my body register danger or absence of safety before the thought appeared? What did my nervous system need in that moment? When we do this, something subtle but powerful often happens. In many relationships, a quiet internal dialogue is running beneath awareness. A question that sounds something like, who is supposed to save this right now? If your child is dysregulated after you've been patient all day, a thought may arise. They need to stop. They need to fix this now. If your boss overlooks your effort again, something inside says they need to make this right. If a partner misses your tone or doesn't respond after weeks of explaining, the feeling emerges. They should know by now. They should save this. The words may differ or may not be words at all, but the pattern is familiar, waiting for the other to rescue the relationship from distress. This impulse is not immaturity, it's not entitlement, it's ancient. It's a return to our earliest experience of relationship. As infants, distress reliably brings rescue. Crying, reaching, even quiet compliance all shape how quickly care arrives. That first year of life matters deeply. It imprints expectations about responsiveness, regulation, and relief. We learn before language that connection saves. Under stress, relationships awaken this old memory, not as recall, but as a reflex. When unmet needs surface in adult relationships, the nervous system doesn't ask for discussion, it asks for rescue. Without awareness, this becomes a silent agreement in many relationships. One of us should fix the distress. And this is where so many partnerships quietly fracture, not because people don't care, but because no one was taught how to see this pattern, name it gently, or work with it from the body upward. With this background, we can now imagine what happens when relational rupture deepens, when an issue goes chronically unaddressed, when emotional baggage continues to fire danger cues, or when the sense of partnership itself begins to fray. At this point, the nervous system is no longer responding to a single moment. It is responding to repeated signals of unsafety. Here, the mind accelerates. Storylines form quickly about the other person, what they should understand, how they should change, or what needs to be managed to restore balance. Simultaneously, the brain and nervous system mobilize survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or collapse. What appears to be a conflict between two people is more accurately a collision between stress responses. Inside one or both individuals, a quiet but powerful message begins to circulate: save us. Not always as words, but as urgency, pressure, frustration, or withdrawal. While attention turns outward towards fixing, convincing, rescuing, or being rescued, the reality is that the stress has taken the wheel, and stress cannot repair stress. Each person can only regulate and restore their own nervous system. This is the inflection point, the moment where we learn to pause instead of pursuing, step out of the immediate relational storyline, and acknowledge that save us is not a shared task in that moment. It's a temporary solo mission. When that mission is taken seriously, something changes. We stop trying to save the relationship through control or collapse and begin restoring safety from the inside out. When we return, we do so differently, not as someone demanding repair, but as someone capable of presence. And this is where the direction of the finger we tend to point outward matters. In turning inward, we face the solo save us mission and find relational safety restoring itself. That is truly worth sharing, either directly or indirectly, as we shift back to safety and interdependence with another person. So I want to share with you guys the mirror tool, reclaiming save us from the inside out. When distress shows up in a relationship, the nervous system doesn't ask, what's the healthiest next step? It asks, where is safety supposed to come from right now? This is where the silent save us signal gets projected outward toward a partner, child, colleague, system, or circumstance. A finger points, urgency builds. The relationship becomes the stage where relief is expected to arrive. The mirror tool is how we interrupt that reflex. Instead of following the finger outward, the mirror tool gently turns it back, away from blame, control, or withdrawal, and toward the stress response underneath. Not to judge it, but to understand it as misguided safety, doing its best with outdated information. The mirror tool can be practiced in 4 simple, repeatable steps. Step 1, catch the save us signal. This first step is not insight, it's noticing. The save us signal often shows up as a spike in urgency, repetitive thoughts about what the other person should do, a pull to explain yourself again, withdrawal, shutdown, or emotional collapse, fantasies of rescue, apology, or sudden understanding. Rather than asking whether the reaction is justified, ask instead, where do I feel the pressure for the situation to be fixed right now? That pressure is the signal. You don't need to interpret it yet, just notice it. Step 2, the stress response. You have to name it, not the story. Next, pause the storyline about the other person and check in with the body. Ask, am I mobilized or frozen? Is my system leaning toward fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or collapse? What does my body believe is at risk right now? This step matters because stress responses feel personal, but they are patterned. Naming them creates space. The moment you can say, this is a stress response, you are no longer fully inside it. This is not self-blame, it's self-location. Now, step 3, use the mirror for what is being reflected back to yourself. Okay, what is being reflected back to me if I use this mirror? Here is where the tool earns its name. Every relationship under stress acts as a mirror, not of who we are, but of what our nervous system hasn't resolved. Ask yourself, what am I hoping this person will make go away for me? What kind of safety am I trying to access through them? What does this reaction remind me of? Not cognitively, but somatically, body-wise. The mirror is not saying you are wrong. It is saying this is familiar. The relationship is revealing something your system learned long ago about how relief arrives. Now, step 4, restore safety before you re-engage. This is the most important and most skipped step. Before returning to the relationship, the task is not communication, it's regulation. Restoration might look like slowing the breath, grounding through movement or contact with the environment, orienting to the present moment. I'm here now, not back then. Giving yourself language you didn't have originally. This feels urgent, but I'm not actually unsafe. Only after safety begins to return internally do you re-enter the relationship. And when you do, your output changes. The nervous system no longer speaks in pressure or reactivity, it speaks in presence. So what changes when you practice the mirror tool? When the save us signal is met internally instead of projected outward, blame softens, demands lose intensity, withdrawal becomes choice instead of collapse, and repair becomes possible without force. You stop trying to be saved by the relationship and start becoming safer within it. This doesn't mean you never need others. It means the direction of responsibility is restored. The relationship becomes a place of connection, not extraction. And over time, something quiet but profound happens. The mirror no longer feels threatening. It becomes informative. So we're going to come full circle here, and I'm going to do an example of a small moment practiced differently. So we're going to use a couple who has been circling a conversation for weeks. One partner is very aware of it, the other is not. They both have been taken advantage of in the past and shared their histories, but one partner has a deeper history of trauma and is very attuned to when things start to feel, quote, assumed okay, without a dialogue or entry point that asks directly if they are. One evening it happens again. Something is said without a lead in or asking, can I talk about this at length with you right now? The familiar surge arrives. Inside, the thought forms quickly. They should know I'm not their therapist for every issue that needs venting. Why don't they know this topic is not okay for me right now? The pressure builds, words line up, ready to lie to get away from the conversation, but instead of speaking, something different happens. The person notices the urgency in their chest, the tight jaw, the shortened breathing, the tension from overthinking. They recognize the familiar signal, not as truth, but as save us. The desire that the other somehow know and stop this. They pause. Silently, they name what's happening. This is a stress response. I want relief. They stop following the storyline about the other person and turn inward. What am I hoping they'll fix for me right now? What does my body think is at risk? There's a moment of clarity, not cognitive, but bodily. This isn't about tonight's comment. This isn't about feeling alone when something important doesn't get noticed, when communication is one way and there's no voice of opposition there. That feeling is old. Instead of pushing for repair, they slow their breath. They ground their feet. They remind themselves, I'm not actually unsafe. I can stay present. Only then do they look back at their partner. When they speak, the tone is different. No avoidant edge, no demand for space, no complaint, just contact. I'm realizing I got really activated just now, they say. I need a minute before we talk about this. We moved into it too fast for me. I feel annoyed, but I don't want to be that to be about you. I need some time. The moment doesn't magically resolve everything, but something vital has shifted. The relationship is no longer being asked to save the person. Safety has begun to return from the inside out, and that changes everything that follows. Later on, the partner discusses that their own steadiness relies on a lot of decompression before engagement, given many relationships, family, work, and partnership demand a presence that they feel more when they are alone, and they want to be the same version of themselves in relation and alone as much as they can. Sharing that opens up the partnership to how they can support these less tangible but equally important goals they each have. So I hope you enjoyed today. On an ending note, as always, Holding Space subscription truly wants to hold you here, not as a follower or a subscriber, but as a democratized and awake person gaining access to their healing journey. Please keep track of what's launching on You Are Not Broken University main site. Enter the phases of healing with the Toolbox approach. You'll find the introductory book on the narrative healing phase there and on Amazon and the author's website. All the links are in the Substack Holding Space curriculum and subscription and on Spotify and YouTube. A 5-star rating really helps others find the self-help resource, the book, so please consider making one if it feels honest. And most importantly, heal on, everyone.